Somewhere tonight, the most powerful man on the internet is lying awake. Not because of a board meeting, not because of a quarterly miss, because there is no water on his bedside table.
Not because he's thirsty, not because of a health condition.
Because when he was a boy in Chennai, his family waited in line every morning for 8 buckets of water. That was the day's supply, 8 buckets, for a family of 4 in the middle of a drought.
The drought was 40 years ago, but the anxiety never left.
And that one detail, a billionaire who still needs the water beside him at night, tells you everything about what kind of leader Sundar Pichai is and why the things he builds look the way they do.
I'm Vaishali, ex-Times Group content lead, award-winning creative strategist and producer across radio, film, animation, live entertainment and branded content.
And I'm Harsh, ex-Goldman Sachs analyst, fund manager, film producer, and a man with a documented weakness for Porsches.
Together, we have worked across 12 countries, including United States, United Kingdoms, multiple countries in Europe, collaborating across cultures, time zones, and very different idea of what a deadline means.
And somewhere in all of that, we kept finding ourselves drawn to the stories of immigrants, the people who had left everything familiar behind and built something extraordinary in a country that wasn't theirs. Because those stories felt closer to our own reality than anything else we were consuming.
So we created the Victory Code podcast, a show about immigrants, their journey, their failures, their successes, and everything in between. Every episode, we go deep into one extraordinary immigrant life and hand you their mindset, their turning point, and their hard-won strategies.
Not inspiration, systems. Not motivation, codes.
Today's code belongs to Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google and Alphabet, one of the most powerful immigrants in Silicon Valley, the man who built the world's most used browser and leads the planet's most visited website.
All of it traced to a 2-room apartment in Chennai, where a boy learned the value of access by carrying 8 buckets of water every single morning.
To understand Sundar Pichai, you have to start somewhere that on the surface seems completely unrelated to Silicon Valley. Not California, not venture capital, not even computers really. You start in Chennai, the 1970s, a time when the most advanced piece of technology in most Indian households was a ceiling fan that worked most of the time.
Now, Chennai in the 1970s was not trying to produce global tech leaders. That wasn't the brief. It was trying to do something far more ambitious. It was trying to function.
Into this beautifully inefficient system is born a boy named Pichai Sundarajan. His father Raghunatha is an electrical engineer at British manufacturing company GEC. His mother Lakshmi is a stenographer. They are in every sense that matters doing everything right. Good education, stable jobs, upward mobility. If life were a spreadsheet, this family would be trending in the correct direction.
And yet, the output is curious. 2 rooms, 4 people. No television, no refrigerator, no car. Which, depending on how you look at it, is either a constraint or an aggressive productivity hack.
Sundar and his brother sleep in the living room, which sounds normal until you realize the living room is not just the bedroom, it is also, depending on the evening, the dining room, the study, and the entire square footage of his childhood, which is a polite way of saying there is nowhere to hide.
And then, because the universe has a sense of timing, Chennai runs out of water. Not metaphorically. Literally.
The government response is swift, organized, and almost poetic in its cruelty. 8 buckets per household. Per day, not per person. Someone in a municipal office looked at a family of 4 or 8 or 10, did the arithmetic, and decided 8 buckets. That's your life. Ration accordingly.
If you've never tried to run a household on 8 buckets of water, let me save you the effort. It's not enough. An average family in India consumes 18 to 24 buckets of water per day. That's approximately 480 liters. The Pichais had to make do with just 160.
So every morning, a small ritual unfolds. Sundar, his brother, sometimes his mother, they stand in line. They wait. They fill their containers and then they carry those 8 buckets home like they are carrying something else entirely.
Because they are. They are carrying uncertainty.
8 buckets is not just water. It is the shape of the day. Everything planned around it. Nothing wasted, not a drop.
And here is the fascinating part. Decades later, when Sundar Pichai is sitting in the boardrooms making decisions that affect billions of people, he still remembers those 8 buckets.
He still cannot sleep without a bottle of water beside his bed. Even now, even in one of the most expensive zip codes in California, the drought never fully left him.
Which raises the question, what does growing up like this actually do to a person?
Well, sometimes they grow up to run the company that gives 5 billion people access to everything they never had.
And sometimes they also never stop counting buckets.
His father earns a respectable salary by the standards of 1970s Chennai. But respectable means no cushion. Every rupee has a job.
And Sundar grows up watching his parents make little go a long way, with dignity, but without excess.
That discipline of making things work with less than you need never leaves him either.
We are going to see it surface in everything he builds and in what he decides not to charge for.
But the single moment that plants the seed of everything, the moment he still talks about 40 years later into running one of the most powerful companies on earth, arrives when he's around 10 years old.
It arrives in the shape of something small, black, and rotary.
In India, in the 1970s, the telephone network is run entirely by the government. One provider, the state. If you want a landline, you apply, and then you wait.
The Pichai family applies for a telephone.
And they wait, and they keep waiting.
5 years.
5 years on a government waiting list for a rotary phone. And if that number sounds extraordinary, Vinod Khosla, the founder of Sun Microsystems, encountered the very same waiting list and made a different decision entirely.
He left India. He decided this infrastructure could not contain his ambition and crossed the ocean to build somewhere else.
In 2026, we get frustrated when a web page takes 4 seconds to load. Sundar's family waits 5 years for the privilege of a wire connected to their wall.
And when the phone finally arrives, something happens that Sundar watches unfold on his own street.
The phone does not just change the Pichai household, it changes the neighborhood.
Neighbors start coming over to call their families in other cities, to hear a voice they have not heard in months.
And Sundar watches a 2-hour trip to the hospital to collect, blood test reports, a trip that sometimes ends with being told to come back tomorrow, become a 5-minute phone call.
He describes what happens inside him as a light bulb going on.
That light bulb never goes out. 30 years later, as CEO of Google, he still describes that phone with the same visceral clarity. And this brings us to our first victory quote. Scarcity sharpens the lens.
When you grow up without something everyone else takes for granted, you see its value more clearly than someone who always had it. Sundar does not study the digital divide in a textbook. He lives it. And that memory makes every product decision he takes for the rest of his career feel personal. He's not building features. He's building what the wait for the phone line could not give him.
The best builders are not the ones who grow up surrounded by the best tools. They are the ones who never forget what it felt like to wait for them.
Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo wrote a book called Poor Economics. Both are Nobel Prize-winning economists. It is one of the most honest examinations of how constraint shapes the way people think and decide. It will change how you see your own background.
And Sundar, armed with that memory, is almost ready for the world. Almost.
Because there is one silver medal still to win and one person yet to meet.
Sundar sits for the IIT entrance examination. IIT, the Indian Institutes of Technology, are among the most competitive universities in the world.
The acceptance rate in Sundar's era, well below 1%, lower than Harvard, lower than MIT. The exam is so difficult that entire coaching industries exist in India purely to prepare students for it.
Currently, the size of the IIT coaching industry stands at around $7 billion. 1.2 million students sit for the exam every year, which is roughly the population of Manhattan. Students start preparing for these exams as early as the 6th grade, almost 6 years of work for a single exam.
Sundar clears it. He goes to IIT Kharagpur, the oldest campus in the IIT system, in West Bengal in eastern India. Metallurgical engineering, and he's exceptional.
He graduates with the institution's silver medal, awarded to one of the very top students of his entire cohort. Not just his department, by the way, his entire cohort.
The boy from the 2-room apartment in Chennai, who carried water in a bucket every morning, who waited 5 years for a phone line, has just been placed at the top of one of the most selective institutions on the planet.
And none of that is the most important thing that happens to him at IIT Kharagpur, because it's time for a little love story.
At some point in every great story, something unexpected enters. Not a technology, not an opportunity, a person.
For Sundar Pichai, that person is a classmate at IIT Kharagpur. Her name is Anjali Haryani. She's studying chemical engineering, she's from Kota, Rajasthan, and this is important. This is the 1990s.
Which means we need to immediately delete a few assumptions. No mobile phones, no texting, No "where are you" messages followed by a blue tick. Communication at this point in human history is inconvenient.
Now, IIT Kharagpur has a system. Men and women live in separate hostels. If you want to meet someone, you don't message them. You walk across campus in real time.
And when you get there, you don't casually wait outside. You go to the front desk. You speak to the person in charge, and then something awkward happens.
They announce your presence.
Loudly.
By name.
In front of everyone.
Which means every time Sundar shows up, the hostel lobby hears, Anjali, Sundar aaya hai, which translates to Anjali, Sundar is here, which is probably followed by a raised eyebrow and a knowing look from the hostel warden.
Now, Sundar tells this story today with a kind of amused disbelief. Because if you were designing a system to make romance slightly more awkward, you would arrive at exactly this.
And yet, it works.
Because something else is happening underneath the awkwardness. Every meeting requires effort. Every conversation is intentional. There is no accidental proximity, no passive connection.
You don't just bump into someone, you choose to see them.
And slowly, across this very deliberate geography, they become close. By his final year, Sundar has two things, a silver medal and a relationship he knows he doesn't want to leave behind.
And then, almost on cue, the story introduces distance.
He gets into Stanford University, material science, full scholarship.
California, and he is going to America, and she is staying in India.
Now, in most stories, this is where things drift. But this story is not done yet.
In fact, this is where it quietly changes shape.
So hold that thought because we'll come back to it.
The plane ticket from India to the United States in 1993 costs the equivalent of an entire year of Sundar Pichai's father's salary.
Not a few months, one full year, gone on one ticket.
Sundar's father buys it.
There is no dramatic scene around this in any interview Sundar gives. No sacrificial speech. No big moment at the kitchen table.
He just says, my father spent the equivalent of a year's salary on my plane ticket to the US. It was my first time ever on a plane.
Think about what that sentence actually contains. A man who has watched every rupee his entire adult life, who raised a family in a two-room apartment.
He looks at his son, hands over a year of his own life without ceremony.
Sundar arrives in Palo Alto, California. Someone has told him the weather is wonderful.
He comes from Chennai. Warm in Chennai means something very different. 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit is a regular Monday.
He goes to a California beach for the first time, walks in expecting something like the backwaters of the Bay of Bengal back home.
It is not warm. It is surprisingly cold.
That is not the familiar warmth of the Bay of Bengal. That is cold water and the particular loneliness of arriving somewhere you have dreamed about and discovering the dream was missing a few crucial details.
You arrive in a place you have worked incredibly hard to get to, and within a few hours, you realize you don't fully understand it yet.
The weather is different. The water, different. The rules are different.
Sundar Pichai is homesick. America is extraordinary and expensive and lonely in ways nobody warns you about. A backpack at the campus store costs roughly what his father earns in a month.
And Anjali is in India. International calls cost more than $2 a minute in 1993. On a graduate student stipend, that is not a phone call. That is a luxury.
For 6 months after he arrives, they do not speak at all. Not one call. 6 months of silence across 12 time zones, held together by nothing except the decision to hold on.
If you have ever been the person who left or the person who stayed, you know exactly what those 6 months feel like.
But there is one thing at Stanford that is for Sundar nothing short of miraculous.
A computer lab. Open, available whenever he wants it. As much as he wants.
For a boy who grows up in a household with no computer, this is not a small thing. He says it without a filter. Walking into that lab and being able to program freely was a genuinely life-altering experience.
He is studying material science, the physical layer of computing. But around him, the world is shifting in ways he will only understand much later.
A graduate student named Mark Andreessen has just released a browser called Mosaic, the program that makes the World Wide Web accessible to ordinary people for the first time. And 2 students named Larry Page and Sergey Brin are on campus about to have a conversation that becomes Google.
Sundar is physically present for both these moments and completely unaware of either.
Oh, by the way, this is the same Mark Andreessen who would later back a congressman named Ro Khanna, representing the very district where Google would one day be built.
Sundar Pichai will say later, The summer I leave Stanford is the same summer Sergey Brin meets Larry Page. These moments would profoundly shape the rest of my life, and at the time, I did not know it.
Sometimes the thing that changes history is right next to you while you are looking somewhere else. Or maybe you are exactly where you are supposed to be.
Let's go back to Anjali, because this is not just a love story, it is a test. And like all great tests, it is administered without warning and graded without mercy.
6 months of silence. Sundar Pichai is in America, broke in the specific way that only a foreign student on a scholarship can be broke. Technically enrolled, technically fine, practically unable to afford a phone call home. So he doesn't make one for 6 months.
Now pause here, because what Anjali does in those 6 months is not nothing. She waits, not passively, she simply holds. And that kind of stillness in the face of silence from someone you love is its own form of extraordinary. A long-distance relationship with no phone calls. Just the decision made privately and without reassurance to hold on.
Eventually, he finishes his studies, gets his footing, feels stable enough to make a real decision. He goes to her parents, asks for their blessing, they say yes. And she comes to America.
And here is where most stories would stop. Girl follows boy, love wins, credits roll. But Anjali Pichai is not a supporting character who wandered into the wrong biography.
She builds her own career. Accenture, then Intuit as a business operations manager, a chemical engineer who understands systems and strategy in her own right. She did not come to stand in his shadow. She came to build her own light.
Sundar Pichai calls her his lucky charm, his most trusted advisor. Over years, real hard years of building a life in a country that was not designed for either of them, she becomes the one whose judgment he trusts above everyone else's.
After Stanford, Sundar joins a semiconductor company called Applied Materials in Palo Alto. Good work, the invisible infrastructure of computing. But something nags at him.
He is working on the physical layer, the chips that make computers possible. And he feels removed from the part that matters to him. The part where technology changes what someone's morning looks like.
Sundar knows that feeling. He has seen it at 10 years old. The rotary phone. The neighborhood, the 2-hour trip becoming a 5-minute call.
He wants to be closer to that. And at Applied Materials, he is as far from it as you can get while still technically working in tech.
So he goes back to school, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania for his MBA. Wharton is one of the most prestigious business schools in the world, the kind whose name opens doors on its own. He graduates in the top 5% of his class.
Sundar Pichai joins McKinsey, the global management consulting firm. More strategy, more frameworks, still more distance from the actual product.
And then, around 2001, while working in Palo Alto, Sundar Pichai uses Google search for the first time.
He is not looking for a job. He is just searching.
And something happens that he has never been able to fully explain in rational terms. He feels it. The same light bulb. The same thing that happens in the living room when the rotary phone arrives.
He says, the first time I used it, I realized this is going to give more access to information to more people than anything before. You could feel it.
The boy who carried 8 buckets, who waited 5 years for a phone, who read everything he could find because knowledge is the one thing no one can ration, looks at Google search and understands in 30 seconds exactly what it is.
He joins Google in 2004, 3 years after that first search, weeks before the company goes public.
And this brings us to our second victory code. The ones without are the ones you build for.
Most technologists ask, what does this thing do? Sundar asks a different question first. Who has this and who does not? What does a Tuesday morning look like for the person who cannot get to it yet? When you build from that question, everything looks different.
You build search, which is free. You build Chrome, which is free. You build Android, free again. You build for the person who has not had access yet.
Sundar Pichai's first assignment at Google is the Google Toolbar, a small plugin that lets users access search from inside their browser. Not glamorous.
But he understands immediately why it matters. The browser is the door to the internet. If someone else controls the door, they control where people go.
By 2006, that insight became urgent. Microsoft is moving to make Bing the default search engine inside Internet Explorer, the browser most of the world uses. If they succeed, Google's core business is at serious risk.
Sundar has a proposal, and he takes it straight to Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google.
He says to Schmidt, "We should build our own browser."
Schmidt has lived through the browser wars of the 1990s. He knows exactly what it costs. His response is immediate and unambiguous.
Are you crazy? You know what it takes to build a browser? We are not building a browser.
Now, most people hear that from their CEO and they update their slide deck. They wait for a better moment.
Sundar does not do that.
And Sundar Pichai quietly keeps building the case. He finds a team in Aarhus, a city in Denmark, that has built a JavaScript engine, the part of a browser that runs web applications, but 25 times faster than anything else available.
He assembles the pieces, builds a prototype. Then he walks back into Eric Schmidt's office and shows it to him.
Schmidt changes his mind on the spot. He says later, "It was so good that it essentially forced me to change my mind."
Not a better argument, not a more persuasive presentation. A thing that existed, worked, and was undeniable.
Google Chrome launches on September 2nd, 2008. Sundar misses his first user target, then misses his second. Now Larry Page pushes him to aim for 111 million users.
By the end of 2010, Chrome hits 111 million users. It becomes the world's most used browser. As of 2026, it holds more than 75% of the global desktop browser market share.
Sundar describes building Chrome as the most fun he has ever had building a product from the ground up. The immigrant who grew up without technology built the door that 3/4 of the world uses to access it.
And this brings us to our third victory code. Choose the destination, not just the career.
When Sundar is asked how he keeps up with Silicon Valley from a classroom in IIT Kharagpur with no internet and no map, he says, "I did not exactly dream of a career as much as a destination." Now, Silicon Valley is not a job title to him. It is a place where the thing he cares about is happening, and he needs to be inside it. Metallurgy to material science to consulting to product manager to CEO, from the outside, no logical plan. From inside, each step is a door into the right building.
You do not need a perfect plan. You need total clarity about the destination.
The path reveals itself once you are in the right place, but you have to commit to the place first.
And there's another victory code hidden in the Chrome story. Conviction without evidence is just noise.
Sundar believes in Chrome, but belief alone does not move Eric Schmidt. Sundar builds a prototype with a 25x faster JavaScript engine. That moves Eric Schmidt. Conviction is the start. Evidence is the finish.
Sundar does not argue more eloquently. He just builds the thing. He makes it so real and so undeniable that the decision becomes obvious.
Adam Grant wrote a book called Originals about how people who push ideas the world called crazy actually bring them to life. He looks at what separates the people who act on a crazy idea from the people who let it go. One of the most useful books for this victory code.
Chrome makes Sundar Pichai one of the most sought-after product executives in Silicon Valley. He takes over Android, the mobile operating system running on the majority of the world's smartphones. He also runs Google Maps, Gmail, Drive, and Search.
By 2014, he is responsible for nearly every product an ordinary person uses when they use Google.
He is, quietly, the person Google cannot afford to lose. And that is exactly when the calls start coming.
In 2011, Twitter approaches him for a chief product officer role. Serious offer, significant financial package.
Then in 2014, Steve Ballmer steps down as CEO of Microsoft. The press widely names Sundar as one of the leading candidates. This is not a rumor, it is a realistic possibility.
And through both of those moments, through Twitter and through Microsoft, Anjali tells him to stay. Not dramatically, not as an ultimatum, just a quiet certainty that something bigger is coming here.
In 2015, when Larry Page steps back to lead Alphabet, the new parent company Google created to house all its businesses, he named Sundar Pichai as CEO of Google.
And in 2019, when Page and Sergey Brin step back further, Sundar becomes CEO of Alphabet as well. CEO of both Alphabet and Google simultaneously.
The boy from the two-room apartment in Chennai, 8 buckets of water a day, running the most visited website in human history.
The Microsoft job goes to Satya Nadella, who becomes one of the most celebrated CEOs of his generation. But the Google job, the one Anjali's counsel keeps Sundar positioned for, is arguably the most consequential technology leadership role of this era.
No wonder he calls her his lucky charm.
The partner you choose is not a personal decision that sits alongside your career. It is one of the most consequential strategic decisions you will ever make. Sundar Pichai is the proof.
And this brings us to another victory code. Build with someone who sees further than you do.
Now, most profiles of Sundar Pichai are only about Sundar Pichai. They should also be about Anjali Pichai. She knows what he is capable of before the world does. She's not afraid to say so, and she's not afraid to say the harder thing, that you need to stay, you have bigger things lined up for you. The partner you choose either clips your wing or makes sure you use them at the right time.
Phil Knight tells the story of building Nike in a memoir called Shoe Dog. His wife Penny plays exactly the role in that story that Anjali plays here. She is the quiet architect behind the public achievement, one of the best business memoirs ever written.
When Sundar becomes CEO in 2015, his first major declaration: Google is no longer a mobile-first company. It is an AI-first company.
Not a slogan, a structural reorientation. He invests in Google Brain, the internal AI research division. He pushes for custom chips called TPUs, tensor processing units, designed specifically to train and run AI at scale. And he protects and expands DeepMind, the British AI research lab Google acquires under his advocacy.
He has described 4 specific moments that crystallize his conviction about AI. All 4 matters, because today they tell you how Sundar Pichai actually thinks.
The first, 2010, the DARPA Grand Challenge. DARPA is the US defense research agency that funds the most ambitious technology experiments in the world. The challenge? Build a car that drives itself. Sundar attends with Larry Page. He watches it happen.
The second, 2012, Google's Jeff Dean demonstrates a neural network that teaches itself to recognize cats from YouTube videos, not programmed, taught on its own.
The third, meeting Sir Demis Hassabis and the DeepMind team, an organization with a coherent long-term vision for AI unlike anything he has encountered.
The fourth is AlphaGo, and this one deserves a pause.
Go is one of the oldest strategy games ever devised. The number of possible positions on the board is greater than the number of atoms in the observable universe. For decades, computer scientists say a machine cannot beat a top human Go player. Too complex, too intuitive.
AlphaGo teaches itself the game from nothing. Then it plays Lee Sedol, the world champion, and it beats him, including with a move on turn 37 that no human would ever have made because no human would ever have thought it was worth trying.
Sundar Pichai watches it happen. He says, seeing AlphaGo start from scratch, be clueless, and then become better through the course of a day, it hits you when you see that.
Then in November 2022, OpenAI launches ChatGPT. The external narrative is immediate. Google is behind, Google is losing. Articles are written calling for Sundar to step down.
Sundar is not panicking. His internal reaction, which he later speaks about publicly, is excitement. The Overton window has shifted. The Overton window refers to the range of ideas that public is willing to take seriously. Before ChatGPT, most people do not believe that a computer can hold a real conversation. After ChatGPT, that changes overnight.
He says when ChatGPT launches, contrary to what people outside feel, I'm excited. We have been building this for so long. The window has shifted. Now we execute.
He merges Google Brain and DeepMind into a single entity called Google DeepMind under Sir Demis Hassabis. He describes it as asking Stanford and MIT to become one great department.
Easier said than done. Real sleepless nights, 2 world-class research cultures learning to share a hallway.
But he's patient. A boy who waits 5 years for a rotary phone knows what patience actually costs.
And this brings us to our 6th victory code. The surface is noise. Go 1 foot deeper.
At the height of the noise, the articles, the op-eds, the open letters demanding his resignation, someone asked Sundar Pichai how he stays steady. He doesn't reach for a leadership framework. He reaches for a metaphor.
He says, jump into the ocean on a choppy day and the surface is chaos. But go down 1 foot, just 1 foot, and it is the calmest place in the universe. That is where he lives when the world gets loud. 1 foot below the headlines, where the model performance is, where the infrastructure holds, where the talent is still showing up every morning, where the information the world cannot yet see is quietly doing its work.
His calmness is not a personality trait. It is not a temperament. It is not indifference. It is the specific, earned stillness of a man who knows what he knows and knows that the surface has never once been the whole story.
There is a difference between calm that comes from conviction and calm that comes from not caring. One is a superpower, the other is a warning sign. Learning to tell them apart may be the most underrated skill in any room.
Pico Ayer's The Art of Stillness delves deeper into this code. Ayer spent years traveling the entire world before arriving at one quietly radical conclusion. The most important journey you will ever take is the one that doesn't move.
Stillness, he argues, is not the absence of motion, it is the presence of clarity. What Sundar finds 1 foot below the surface of the ocean, Iyer spent a lifetime learning to find inside himself. In a world that rewards the loudest voice in the room, this book makes the case for the ones who say nothing and sees everything. Read it slowly, that is rather the point.
20th January 2023, a Friday morning, Sundar Pichai sends an email, not to a department, not to a division, to every single person at Google. And before some of them have even finished reading it, before the second paragraph, before the apology, before the words "take full responsibility," their laptops go dark, their badges stop working, their access to years of work, of colleagues, of identity, gone, just like that, on a Friday morning.
12,000 people, 6% of the global workforce, the largest single-day layoff in Google's 25-year history. Among them, long-tenured employees, recently promoted employees, people who had given the company a decade, 2 decades. One software engineer who had spent 20 years at Google found out about his last day via email. He posted, "What a slap in the face."
Within days, nearly 1,400 employees signed a petition addressed to Pichai demanding better treatment, freezing new hires, offering voluntary redundancies first, protecting workers on parental leave, supporting visa holders at risk of losing not just their jobs, but their right to remain in the country. The reaction was not just grief, it was organized, structured, and furious. And it was legitimate.
Yeah. Because here is what this moment actually reveals about the weight of leading at this scale. 12,000 people did not make the decision that ended their careers at Google. One person did. That is what it means to hold the seat. The decisions are yours. So is the cost. And the cost here was not a number on a spreadsheet. It was 12,000 lives redirected without warning on a Friday morning.
At the town hall that followed, Pichai told employees that executive bonuses would be cut and tried to explain why laid-off staff had their system access removed without warning. He did not deflect. He did not perform confidence he didn't have. He stood in the heat of it and said, "This was not the right way to do it. We could have done this differently, and I own it."
That is not a small thing to say in a room full of people who are angry at you. Most leaders at that moment reach out for the passive voice. Mistakes were made, processes fell short, the situation was complex. Sundar Pichai did not do that. He used the first person, singular, present tense, I.
He called it the worst moment in Google's 25-year history. And the employees who pushed back, who signed the petition, who asked the difficult questions in public forums, they were right to do so. That accountability from below is not a problem to be managed. It is exactly how it should work.
The victory quote story is never just the highlight reel. It is also this, the moments where the weight of what you have built lands on people who did not choose it, where the decisions made at the top reshapes lives at the bottom. A CEO's power is not just the power to build. It is the power to disrupt thousands of people in a single morning.
How a leader sits with that truth is the question this chapter does not fully answer. What it does tell us is that the question was asked, loudly, by the people it needed to come from.
In 2024, 2 things happened in consecutive days that may be the most remarkable footnote in the history of any technology company.
On a Monday, Sundar Pichai visits Google's quantum computing lab in Santa Barbara. He spends the day with the team, drives home energized. The next morning, he learns that the team's chief scientist has won the Nobel Prize in Physics.
This comes the day after Sir Demis Hassabis and John Jumper, who lead Google DeepMind, win the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for AlphaFold. AlphaFold is the AI system that solves one of the most profound problems in biology: how proteins fold into the shapes that determine how they function in the body. Scientists spend decades on this. AlphaFold does it with AI.
Back-to-back Nobel Prizes, 2 consecutive mornings, both connected to work Sundar champions and protects over years when the results are not yet visible.
He does not say Google wins 2 Nobel Prizes. He says, I got to celebrate with people I work with.
He sees his role as a steward of other people's brilliance, not as the source of it. In a culture that rewards individual genius above almost everything else, that framing is its own kind of code.
And then there is the moment with his father.
The father who spent a year of his salary on a plane ticket, who raised a family in a 2-room apartment.
Sundar puts his father in a Waymo, a self-driving car developed by Alphabet that navigates entirely without a human driver. Sundar sits in the back, his father sits in the front, and no one behind the wheel.
When I saw Waymo for the first time in Los Angeles, I was stunned. I can't imagine what it must have felt like to someone born in the 40s.
Yeah.
His father looks at the world with the same awe that Sundar feels as a 10-year-old when the rotary phone arrives. Technology as revelation. The same light bulb, a different device, a different generation.
And Sundar's own children? They pick up their phones, they do not look up.
He tells the story to explain something about progress. What is extraordinary becomes ordinary. And at that moment, when the miracle becomes routine, is not the death of wonder.
It is the sign that the miracle worked.
And then there is one final story, the one that is maybe the truest answer to why any of this matters.
At the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, an Indian athlete named Neeraj Chopra wins gold in the javelin throw, India's first ever gold medal in a track and field event.
He grew up in a small village in Haryana, a state in northern India. No formal coach, no training infrastructure around him.
He watches YouTube videos. He studies the techniques of world-class javelin throwers. He practices, and then he becomes the best in the world.
YouTube is free, accessible, built by a team that believed from the beginning that knowledge should not sit behind a paywall.
But here is Sundar's part in this. He is the one who makes free the philosophy, not just the price tag. As CEO, every time the pressure comes to monetize more aggressively, to gate content, to extract more from the user, he holds the line. Search stays free. Chrome stays free. Android stays free. YouTube stays free. Yes, there is a premium option for those who want it, but the core, the search, the video, the knowledge has never moved behind a wall. Not one result, not one video. The person with no credit card gets the same access as everyone else.
For me personally, out of all the free Google services, the one that amazes me every day is Google Maps. We take it for granted, but the level at which it has transformed modern transportation is right up there with the invention of the wheel.
I agree. And as a designated navigator, I was immensely grateful for Google Maps during our upstate New York road trip from Catskill Mountain to Niagara Falls. Imagine doing that pre-Google Maps era.
And this brings us to our final victory code. In Sundar's own words, be patient with your growth. Work on something meaningful, excellence and impact compound over time.
Sundar joins Google in 2004. He is named CEO in 2015. That is 11 years. Not one brilliant moment. A decade of Chrome and Android and search and maps and Gmail and Drive. He is not an overnight success. He is a compound one.
And here is what that means. Every year you spend building real skill in the right place, pointed at the right destination, is a year that accumulates. It does not look like much in year 3, but it looks like everything in year 11.
Sundar Pichai starts as a boy who waits 5 years for a telephone. He becomes the man who makes information free for 5 billion people.
He does not just build a browser. He builds the door that 3/4 of the world uses to get online.
He does not just run a search engine. He becomes the reason a kid in a village in Haryana with no formal coaching can watch YouTube video and win an Olympic gold medal.
And then he goes back.
In 2017, Sundar Pichai visits a rural village just outside Kharagpur, the same city where he studied at IIT, where he carried his silver medal, where he first found Anjali. He is there as part of a program called Internet Sathi. The word Sathi means companion, so the project is basically called Internet Companion. Internet Sathi trains women in rural villages to use the internet, who then travel to other villages to train more women.
In this village, Sundar meets a woman who had only discovered the internet 6 months prior. She demonstrated a classic lost in translation moment. When she used voice search for puri, expecting a recipe for the puffy, deep-fried Indian bread, the AI instead gave her travel directions to Puri, a major coastal city hundreds of miles away. She pointed out that simple human gap in the algorithm. She wanted to cook her breakfast, but the technology thought she wanted to book a vacation. The CEO of Google gets a strong product note from a woman in a rural village in India.
He takes it back, and they fix it.
The Internet Sathi program benefited over 30 million women across rural India through the efforts of 80,000 women trainers.
During COVID, when India's second wave hit, Google and its teams provided over $15 million in funding to give India and UNICEF for medical supplies and support for high-risk communities. He matched the donation personally.
He has trained 100 million people in digital skills globally via Google. He has committed $10 billion to India's digital infrastructure. He received the Padma Bhushan, India's third highest civilian honor, in 2022.
And in 2026, he stood at the AI Impact Summit in New Delhi and said, "I believe India is going to have an extraordinary trajectory with AI, and we want to be a part of it."
The boy from the two-room apartment in Chennai is now building the infrastructure that could give the next generation of Indians the same shot he never had.
There is one more detail that almost no one knows. As a child, Sundar had an extraordinary ability to memorize telephone numbers. His family had no phone for first 12 years of his life, and so he memorized every number he ever heard, holding it in his head, the connection he could not yet make.
The boy who could not call anyone memorized everyone he might one day reach.
Decades later, he builds the machine that remembers everything for everyone.
The immigrant story is not just about crossing a border. It is about what you carry with you when you do.
And what you go back to give. If today's episode changed how you see what is possible, share it with one person who needs to hear it.
Every episode, we take one extraordinary immigrant life, go all the way back to the beginning, decode every decision that made it, and hand you the specific mindset, the turning points, and the hard-won strategies you can actually use in your own life.
Not inspiration, systems. Not motivation, codes. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'm Vaishali.
And I'm Harsh, and this is the Victory Code Podcast.